So in the previous section, we talked about JavaScript dates, and now we're talking about the built-in object called regular expression. And this is not just a built-in JavaScript object. This is an entire topic. Like, I almost think of this as another language that you're kind of trying to learn in programming. It's obviously not Turing complete or anything, but regular expressions are basically a way to pattern match within strings. And you might be asking, well, why would we want to do that? And to show you why, let me just open up a web application. We'll just go to you need a budget, and this is a budgeting app that I use and really like. But if you go to the login page, log in right here, and you type in your email address, but you type it in incorrectly, it's going to say, please enter a valid email address. And you might be asking, well, how does it know what is an invalid email address? You may go through a bunch of different types of emails, like a big long list of emails. That's probably not going to be efficient, of course. But what we can do is we can use regular expressions to pattern match and basically say, okay, I expect to see these certain characters, and then an @ symbol, because every email address has an @ symbol, and then some sort of valid domain or whatever for that email address. So we can pattern match, and that's why regular expressions are so powerful. You can validate emails, and you can also do a whole host of other things. It's great for validation, but it's not only for validation. Now, as we're going through this, just keep this in mind. This is a very loaded topic, as I said, and you don't need to fully understand how to write these regular expressions. It's really not a high priority thing for you right now if you're trying to learn how to code, because you can get away without regular expressions while writing web apps. They're just very nice to have. They can really speed up your workflow down the road, and you need to be at least exposed to them. So all I ask here in this video is you understand what they are, what they do, and just how to read them in general, just kind of understanding the symbols and be able to piece together what a regular expression is doing. I wouldn't worry about learning and mastering how to write them. So if we go to the JavaScript documentation, let's see here, we'll go to Technologies, JavaScript, as we've been doing. I'm just kind of reiterating this. Then you go to built-in objects, and then we can go down to the regular expression object, which is going to be regexp. And it says it's an object used for matching text with a pattern. So as I said, pattern matching. Now let's go ahead and write a basic regular expression. I'll show you how to do this here. So we'll say email validator regular expression, and this will be kind of similar to what we just looked at, where it's validating whether the email address is correct. Now, this implementation that I'm about to write is by no means exhaustive, and it's definitely going to miss a couple cases. And I guarantee you, YNAB or you need a budget is using a much more complex expression than the one that I'm about to show you here. So, anyways, let's go through this and just get an idea of what we're dealing with. So let's say that our user input, this is what we type into the form. So, I go here, I type into the form, I type something. That's what this user input variable is going to represent. And I might put in something like invalid email @g. And obviously this is not a valid email, so we should reject this by using this regular expression. So we'll say a new variable, we'll say it's is valid, and then what we have to do is we take our email validator regular expression from up here, and we can use one of the built-in methods on it. So if you come down to the left, you can see all of the different built-in methods, and one of these, if we go down to methods, are we even on the right one here? Okay, we're on regular expression. Okay, I was just missing it completely. So here are the methods. These are pretty confusing to look at, but the two that we're looking at here is going to be exec and test. So we can use test to just see if something is valid. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to use the test, and then we're going to pass in our user input. So we're saying take this regular expression or this pattern that we've defined and map it up against this string that we have defined. And if you press enter, it's going to, and then show what the value is, it's going to be false because this is an invalid email and that expression up there, that regular expression, did not match it. Now, if we look at this regular expression, there's all these characters which probably look like complete gibberish to you, but I'll quickly walk you through what this is doing and then we'll go back to the basics and really understand it. So this first character just says, I want to start at the beginning of the line. This period represents all characters, and then this plus sign that comes directly after the period says I want to match any character one or more times. Then we have the @ symbol, which is just looking for the @ symbol, and then we have this period again, so we want any character one or more times, and then we use this slash to basically escape and actually look for a period. So if you have gmail.com, we need that period, and in order for this special character to be escaped, we have to use this backslash or right here, and then we use another period for any characters one or more times, and finally the end of the line with the $sign. So I know that's super confusing. I would never expect you to follow along with what I just said, but just to give you a taste of what we're dealing with here. All right, so let's go kind of to the very basics here. With regular expressions, I like to think of it in two pieces. So you have the identifiers and then you have the quantifiers. And the identifiers can be one of a ton of different things. It can be special characters or just the characters or phrases that you're trying to match. These identifiers are what you're actually trying to pattern match within the string. So if we created a regular expression, we'll say new regular expression, and then we're going to pass in the letter G. And now I'm going to pass in a couple of strings here. So we'll say string 1 and string 2. And you'll see that if we're trying to match the letter G, it only occurs in the second string right here. So if we were to say the regular expression dot test and then pass in string 1, we're going to get false. But if we test it against string 2, it's going to give us a value of true because it did in fact match the G in the middle of the string. But in this case, our regular expression is just taking a single character and looking for it, which is probably not what you're going to be doing. You're probably going to get a little bit more complex than that. So maybe you test for an entire word. So let's type another one. So we'll say regex 2. Some people would say regex, some regex, regular expressions, whatever. But anyways, we're going to say this one is going to be equal to an entire word. So in both strings, we have the word favorite. So now if we test the second regular expression up against both of the strings, it's going to return true. So no matter which string we put in there, it's going to return true there, as you can see. So we can also match a full word in addition to just a single character. But the interesting thing about regular expressions, or I guess maybe not interesting, but important thing, is that it's case sensitive. So if I were to make another regular expression, let me go ahead and just clear the screen for a second so we get some more room. And let's say our regular expression is going to be equal to favorite with capital letters at the beginning and the end. And we of course need to bring in our strings again because we refreshed the page. But this time, if we map up the regular expression and test it against string 1, we're going to get false because there are no capital, there's no word in there called favorite that has a capital F and a capital E. So you'll see string 2 also returns false. So this is case sensitive. You have to pay attention to the uppercase and lowercase letters. Now, you don't have to just use single letters or single words or phrases. You can use special characters, and that's really where the power of a regular expression comes in. So there are a multitude of special characters that we can use, but I'm going to put on the screen a couple of the really popular or common ones. So the first one is going to be anything that we put into brackets. And another thing that I want to share here is that you don't have to write a regular expression like we did up here. This is one way to do it, just like we saw with the strings. You can modify or create a string in two different ways. Now, the more common way that we're going to be creating a regular expression is you put 2 forward slashes and then you put in your regular expression here. So in this case, I could put in G, and that's going to be our regular expression that we wrote first. We could also put in favorite, and that's going to be a regular expression. And as we saw, you can actually execute methods on, a literal like this. So we can test string 1 against this. But if we go back and lowercase these letters, now it's going to return true. So this will be good for me to show this syntax so we can quickly loop through a bunch of different patterns here. So we're just going to change the regular expression here, and we're comparing it against string 1. The first thing you can do in a regular expression is a character group. And all you do is have these 2 brackets, and then whatever you define in that character group is going to apply to the regular expression. So what we could say is A to Z, uppercase. And what that is doing is matching all uppercase letters. Now in our string 1, there are no uppercase letters, so we return false because it doesn't match. But we can also pass in A to Z, where we have all lowercase letters, which obviously does match at least one of these letters. Moving on, we can also have 0 through 9, which is going to match all numbers within a string. Now there's no numbers here, so it's not going to match, returns false. And then you can combine these together. So you can match all uppercase letters, all lowercase letters, all numbers, and then you could even match spaces in here. So if we added a space here, we could match spaces. And this is going to return true because we're matching the spaces, the lowercase letters, so on and so forth. So that's what we're using with these brackets. You have a lot of different options within those brackets. Now, we talked about earlier that this period, when used in the context of a regular expression, represents any character whatsoever. Now, this is going to return true because it represents any character. Now, the next one we'll look at is \D, and this is going to match all numbers. This is equivalent to saying brackets 0 through 9. So it's completely equivalent, just a different way to write it. In this case, there's no numbers, so it returns false. We also have \S, which will match any white space characters. There's spaces between the words in these strings, so it does match. Then we also have \W, which matches all letters and numbers, so alphanumeric. So these are just some shortcuts that you can use. As I said when I was interpreting that email validator, this little caret represents the beginning of a string. So if we put in the caret and then we put in an F, it's going to return false because the first letter of the string we're testing it against, so string 1, is actually M. Now if we put in M, it's going to return true. But we could put in the F, returns false because we're starting at the beginning of the line, but if we take that out, it then returns true because we're no longer constrained to the beginning of the line. Now what we could do also is the end of the line, which is a $. So F is not the last letter of this string, it's actually K, so that's how we would make that return true. And then finally, we have these little groups that we can make. So if you put parentheses here, and then you can say, you could say code or steak or something like that. And that's going to match either code, the word code, or the word steak. And in this case, we're looking at string 1. Steak is in there, so it's going to match. So those are just some of the different ways that we can write the identifiers, and you can see how flexible this is and how creative you can get to match different patterns within a string or like a line of text. Now the next thing, and the second piece of this equation, is going to be quantifiers. Now so far we have been using this test method to basically show whether or not we have matched a certain character in the string. But if we, let's rewrite this here. So let's say that we want to match all lowercase letters, which returns true. That's all that's telling us is that in string 1, we have at least one lowercase character. Now if we come over here and change this test method to exec, it's going to do a little bit different operation. And you can read about this here in exec. It shows you kind of what it returns, the different values of this array that it returns. But basically what this is telling us here is that all that it matched when we wrote this regular expression is the letter M. Because it started at the beginning of the string, it matched that one lowercase character and it said, okay, that's all I need to match. Now, if we want to match more than just one character, we want to match a section of a string, then we have to actually tell it that. And the way we do that is through quantifiers. So there are a couple different quantifiers, and I'll try to roll through all of them and explain all of them just really quickly, as this, again, is just an overview. So the first one is a star. And the way that this works is you put your identifier at the beginning, and then you follow that by a star or another quantifier that you're trying to use. And so what this is saying is that I'm trying to match any lowercase letter, and the star is saying I want to match any lowercase letter 0 or more times. So in this case, it's, since we're matching 0 or more of the preceding character, it's pretty much going to return something every time. Now we can change this to a plus sign, which is going to match one or more of the preceding character. And then we can put a question mark to represent either 0 or 1 quantity of that previous character. And in this case, you see that the matched value is going to be only the first letter because we're looking for 0 or 1. Now we can be explicit about this. So we can say we want to match a certain amount of characters. But before we do that, I want to add a little space within this identifier, because right now we're only matching this first word here. So if we add a space in here, now it's going to start matching the entire sentence or string. So if we put in the plus sign, you can see my favorite food is steak, so it matches the entire string because they're all lowercase letters. Now if we wanted to be specific, we wanted to match a certain amount, all we'd have to do is these little brackets as a quantifier, and then we can pass in a specific number. So let's say that we wanted to match, say, 5 characters. Well, it's going to get the first 5 characters, so my space, that counts, fa, and that's going to match the first 5 characters. Now, we can also do a range. So we can say we want to match between 2 and 6 of the preceding character that we're looking at. So it's just going to match 6 because that's the upper bound, but you can match like a range of characters. So these are all the different quantifiers, and you can use these to take the pattern that you're matching and tell it how much of that pattern you want to match. Now, before we go into kind of a final example to just tie all the concepts together, I want to show you one other thing, and that is going to be in the documentation. There is this thing called a flag. So if you define a regular expression, so we'll say our regex is going to be equal to, a new regular expression, but we could also write it with these 2 slashes. You can also pass in a flag, and that goes at the end of these 2 slashes. And here are all the possible flags. In this case, we might want to do a global search, so it will search for the pattern even if it occurs multiple times. And if you wanted to use that, all you would have to do is write your regular expression here. So we might say we want to match all lowercase letters 1 or more times, and then at the end we put a G, which represents that flag. So that's just a slight nuance to this, and you'll see this, so just be able to recognize it. Anyways, let's move into a basic example where we can just apply those concepts of the identifiers and then the quantifiers, and then we'll wrap it up for this section on regular expressions. So we're going to write first a string. So here's the string that we're going to want to match. So we'll say hello world, and then let's put in a couple numbers, 2021, and then let's put in a couple spaces here, and we'll put in, I don't know, we'll put an @ symbol in here as well, and then more of a string at the end. And our goal is to basically write a regular expression that is going to match this entire string. So we can do it in a multitude of ways, but I'll just go with the most obvious ways that I can think of. So we'll write our regular expression, and we're going to use this syntax here. So the first thing that we'll notice is that we have some lowercase letters to start. So we can use the brackets here. So this is, again, not the most simple way to do this, but this will hit home all these concepts for you. So we'll say that we want to match lowercase letters and spaces. So let's add in that space right there. And we want to match that one or more times. And then actually I'm going to do this in real time so that we can see what's happening. So instead of putting it in a variable, we'll do it how we did it before. So we're going to look at all lowercase letters and then add a space. And then I'm going to execute that against the string so we can kind of begin to see what we're matching here. So we're looking for all lowercase letters one or more times. So we got the hello world. Then we're looking for a comma. We can just put the comma in as it is. Then we're looking for some spaces and numbers. So why don't we pass in 0 to 9 and then another space, and we want to match that one or more times. And then we want to match the @ symbol, and then we want to match lowercase letters. So again, A to Z, and then we need a space in there, and then we say one or more times. And then for good measure, this is not necessary, but we can just put this little upwards caret to indicate the beginning of the string and a $sign to indicate the end of the string. You can see here that we have matched this entire string. Now, of course, we can do this a lot simpler. All we need to do is put a period in there and a +sign, which matches any character one or more times, and there we match the whole string. But hopefully this was just a brief overview of a very basic explanation of regular expressions. It's a built-in object within JavaScript, like we talked about, that you're going to stumble upon, and eventually it may come in handy for you, but most importantly, just have an understanding of what they are, what they do, and how to read them. In the next part, we're going to start looking at some of the built-in JavaScript string methods.